process has started. We have people inside walking through, and we should hear more from the governor later this afternoon. A lot of frustration. This party believes the president is helping us. Appreciate that. To put the question to our doctors, the Surgeon General today says the week ahead is going to be, quote, very bad. And yet the president seems to be hinting it's time to roll it out. We'll be right back.
You know me, but did you know for the first time ever you can raise your credit scores instantly with Experian Boost? Get your FICO score and raise it instantly, all for free.
Download the Experian app now. Want a better credit card? We got you. The experts at NerdWallet compare hundreds.
Hey.
How are you?
Oh my God, good. That's so funny. I can see my side of my face right there.
Maybe I need to turn that. All right, we're good.
Okay, cool. How's everything going?
I feel like it's going pretty well. We had like a minor issue with breakout rooms earlier, but I think I figured out what it was. So
Okay, great.
feeling pretty good about it.
Okay, good. Hi, Kiara. Hi. Okay, cool. I'm gonna bounce back and forth between 6th and 7th. I'll see you in a little bit.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ms. Mezza. See ya.
Animals are abused every day, and they can't ask for help.
Mr. Perennia,
Yes.
can you please show the front cover of the history packet that we're supposed to have?
I actually don't have the cover to the packet, but it's going to be a
okay.
review sheet today. So let me share that with you. So what it's going to look like is going to be. Okay. Okay, so it looks like this, Katie, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for being on time, everybody. Those of you that are in here. It is 11:50, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here because I want to make sure that we can use the most of our time here. So this lesson is going to be a little bit difficult because we had a lot of time off, and now we're reviewing for what would be a unit test, but obviously, as we know, we don't take unit tests remotely, so you're not going to have a test. But what we're going to do is kind of treat it as just an opportunity to review some of the content that we have learned. And so while you won't be tested, it's just going to be a good opportunity to remember some of these important terms because they will come back and they will be really useful if you're looking to go into a career of economics. So what I want you to do for your do now is just take a look at this section 1 here. And as people are coming in, I'm going to have you fill out this in your packet. If you do not have the packet, that's okay because it's on the screen. So I'll just zoom in so you can see this, and I want you to try to match these terms here. So you can get started on that now. So if you're just coming in, welcome Eric and Alejandro. We're working on the unit review. There is no test here. So just use this as an opportunity to review your terms, and the terms are on the board here. And if you have a question, you can just individually chat me. Welcome, Bintu. We're just working on the unit review packet. So if you have that, you can take that out. That's also on the board for you here. Welcome, Lemuel. We're just working on the review packet here for history, so you can start working through the review now.
Mr. Perennial,
Mm-hmm.
what does the front of the package look like?
I don't know because I don't have the packets here with me. We made them a while ago, but if you can't find it, that's okay. You can just follow along here.
Okay.
Someone was holding it up, actually. Can you hold that up again? Because I couldn't see. Okay, Eric's holding it up.
Mr. Perennial.
Yes,
For the history packet, is it on the school website?
it should be. Yes.
Okay.
And a couple of the scholars have been holding it up. It has the title says immigration reform. And then just mute yourself after you've asked your question here. So we're just going to take another minute or so to go through this. Lemuel, can you just chat me your question, please? Okay, so I'm about to read off the answers here. And then we'll go through this here. So just finish up. I'm going to put the answers on the board here. So here's what we'll do. So those are the answers to the do now. So the spinning Jenny was basically a machine that allowed weavers to spin more than one thread at a time.
Mr. Perennial.
So just put a thumbs up reaction in the chat, or not in the chat, sorry, but just hit the reaction emoji when you have seen the answers and you copied them down. Please don't type. I'm just going to disable the chat for now, just so that we're not distracted here. And just make sure that you're muted. We're going to move on to the next thing here. So I'm going to share what your packet would look like. So in your packet, if you have your packet, if you don't, once again, just follow along on the screen here. We have, so you need to make sure that you're muting yourself. And so right here, we have just some quick review. So I think the best way to do this is that I'm going to give you some time to work on this independently, and then I'm going to break us into breakout rooms here so that we can talk about the answers. So if you don't have your packet, once again, just follow along on the screen. If you do, you can work ahead in here, but you're just going to work through section 2 right now. Lemuel, I see your hand is raised, so I'm going to unmute you here. Okay, Lemuel, ask your question.
Is this the packet?
Let me see. I think it is, Lemuel. I think so. And then Silas, I see your hand is up. Ask your question.
Is section 2 from number 1 to 4?
Yes, that is correct. So let me scroll down here so you can see it. So yeah, 1 through 4. And I'll zoom out here so that you can fully see it. And just do your best here. And we'll say take about 5 minutes to work through this, and then we'll go into breakout rooms here. One second, Josue. If you don't have the history packet, just follow along on the screen for right now, because a lot of it, you're not going to need to jot down a lot of information. So just get some loose leaf paper and try to fill it in there. So we have about 1:30 left. Once again, if you have questions, you can just send them in the chat. Okay, so that's all the time we have here. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna go over these really quickly, and then we're gonna get to one of the more interesting things here, which is gonna be, we're gonna have a class discussion and do some writing about the agricultural revolution and some of the innovations there. So let me quickly go over these answers. So for section 2, number 1, the first stage, this is what you're going to want to fill in here. And I will actually zoom in on this so you can see this in a second here. So for the first stage, you want England and America's 1760s and to 1860s factories. So let me share this with you. Okay, so here it is on the screen. The second stage is Great Britain, America, and Germany's 1860s into 20th century. And then the third stage is developed nations, 1980 to now, the information age. And then the next thing you want to do is name 3 changes that led to an agricultural revolution here. So we need, for sure, the cotton gin, steam locomotive, canals, roadways, steamboat. You also want, or sorry, that was the innovations. For this one, 3 changes that led to it. You could put the enclosure movement, new farming techniques, better productivity, better techniques, and better food and health. And then what invention for 4 is the cotton gin. So that's the last one here. So now that we've done that, I got a couple of hands up here. Josue, you have a question?
I have a question.
Okay. Silas, you have a question?
No.
Okay, just make sure you lower your hand after. So what we're going to move to now is going to be the critical thinking aspect. So let me share my screen with you so you can see what we're going to be doing here. Okay, so being that we're not having a test on this, it just makes sense to have some writing and some discussion time. Before we get into that, remember that at this time, so if you look up here, we had in this unit, we talked about the idea of communism. We also talked about Marxist ideology. So communism was this idea that everyone has what they need. Eventually, the government is no longer needed. So this is an ideal government because you give everybody the rights that they need, and then at some point the government's no longer needed. So that's the idea of communism. And so when you have communism, you have this idea of capitalism. And then it kind of crashes because it turns into imperialism. And then it becomes socialism before it becomes communism. So he thought that countries like America, which is a capitalistic country, would eventually just kind of die out or change their government and would become socialist. And then socialism could lead to communism. Next year, you're going to need to make sure that you remember these government ideas because you are going to be learning about them in reading. You're going to be reading a book called Animal Farm. So I'll write that here. So you will read this book called Animal Farm, which is going to be all about imagery and symbols that represent communism. So make sure that you don't forget this. And then Eric, if you could just take that out of your mouth here. Oh, you already have the book? Okay, I see. That's great. So you can start reading Animal Farm. It's one of my favorite books from when I was in middle school, and it's a really, really deep and book that's interesting to follow because it's a narrative. And so it's going to be about these communism aspects that you're going to be able to follow next year. Quincy, I'll take your question really quickly. So let me unmute you. Okay, Quincy?
My question is, are we going into break rooms after this?
So what we're going to do, unfortunately, I don't have another teacher in here. So I think that someone didn't come in here because of a scheduling issue. And so we're not going to be able to do break rooms, but we are going to have some discussion.
All right.
Good question. Bintu, your question.
Wait, so do we have the book Animal Farm in our packet? Do we just have to read along or do it for homework?
So good question. You're not going to be reading it this year, actually. So you're not going to read the book Animal Farm this year, but next year, and you'll have the book next year. So don't worry about it. But if you're interested in reading Animal Farm, like in your independent reading, I can send you a link to it if you really want to get started on reading it. It's a very good book, but you don't have to read it now. Just be thinking about communism and what it means for next year. And then Niall, last question.
So you're saying that if, like, to get to communism, according to Karl Marx, first it starts with capitalism, then it goes to socialism.
Yeah, so he basically believes that if you are a capitalistic country, Naya, you're going to eventually crash, and that's the first step. And then you're socialist, where people are getting more rights, and then you can go to communism when the government is no longer needed and everything's ideal. So that is the way it worked, and that's not the most important thing you need to remember. So don't worry about it. That's confusing, but that's basically what he believes. So he was basically saying that he thought America would become communist eventually. So that's basically how he did that. Good question. So now what we're going to do, I'm just going to fill out number 10 for you because this is an important aspect. So Lenin in your packet here or in your notes, either fine. Lenin led Russia / the USSR. And in 1917, we had the Bolshevik Revolution. So that's when that all happened. And then Mao led China into communism. So Marxism is basically, we read an excerpt from the Communist Manifesto. And Karl Marx wrote that. So Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto, and it's basically the idea that people need more rights. People should have food, take care of them, should have food, and people should be able to take care of them. They'll have work, and people should work because they love what they're doing and not just to get money. So that was his idea. And Synovia, I see that you have a hand, so you may ask a question.
What? Okay, let me see. Yeah. What does it say? It says Lenin and then Russia, and then I don't know what it says afterwards.
Oh, the USSR. So that's like the Soviet Union.
Okay.
Good question. And then Lemuel, your question?
Can I go get a paper so that I can take notes?
Yeah, feel free. You can just send me a chat when you're going to do that really quickly, just so I know where you're going, and you can do that. Thank you. So now what we're going to do is I think I want to have us write and have a little discussion as a class about communism and, you know, how we feel about these government systems. So in order to do that, in our packet here, we have number 4 and 5 towards the back here. 4 says, describe the way that groups and people such as labor unions and Robert Owen tried to respond to the problems associated with the Industrial Revolution. And then 5 says, explain Karl Marx's ideology by discussing his views about class struggle, the workers' revolution, socialism, and communism. What I want you to do here, instead of just summarizing, because in history, we don't want to just settle for summarizing ideas. In history, what we want to do is we want to create arguments about ideas. So how Bintu feels about something could be different than how Silas does. And it's important that they both express how they're feeling about it and they use evidence to back it up. So what I want you to do here is explain the following, or answer the following question. Why were changes, actually, we'll make this a question. Were changes necessary in the Industrial Revolution? And then I'll write a little stem to help you get started here. I want you to argue just off of what you know. So based on what you know about the Industrial Revolution, you're going to argue whether you think that the changes were necessary or that everything was going as planned. And then down for number 5, I want you to answer the following question. Do you agree with Marxism? And then if you need help in defining what that is, you're going to use these to help you out. So this is basically the topics that I'm talking about with Marxism. So I see that a couple people have a question here. Silas, I saw your hand go up and it wasn't there before, so I'm going to unmute you. What's your question?
My question is, what if you forgot everything that you learned during history, like in school?
Yeah, and just do your best. So basically, whatever you remember from history, argue based off that. So maybe look at some of your past notes and, you know, think about what was a labor union, what rights did children have at this time? Because I think we studied some of the factory pictures, Silas, so maybe you can remember what children had to go through. And maybe you can remember who owned the factories and things like that. So if you feel comfortable, you're going to get started. And then Anthony, I'm going to take your question, but just get started on these. I'm going to give us 7 minutes to answer this. And then I'm going to call on some people to share out their responses to these. So I'm starting my timer now. And Anthony, I'm going to ask that you just send me your question in the chat. So we have about 3 minutes remaining. So those of you that have your hands raised, just try to get something down on paper and then maybe you can express it verbally. The main thing is getting down a sentence or so. So Novi, if you could just message me your question in the chat. Thank you for letting me know, Joseph. Just see if you can add a little bit onto it while we're waiting here. Quincy, I see your hand as well. Yes, thank you for letting me know, Sinovia. You absolutely can. Thank you for letting me know, Angelina. Katie and Anaya, you can both do that. Thank you for asking. Anaya, thank you for letting me know. We have about 40 seconds. So be prepared to defend your answer here. Why or why not? Don't just say that you do or you don't. Yeah, Angelina, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, so we are officially out of time to work on this independently. So now we are going to share out some of our answers and our thoughts on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower all hands just so that if you had your hand up earlier, it's lowered. Besides, I know Sinovia wanted to share out, so I'm going to keep her hand up. If you'd like to share out, raise your hand on the, not in the camera, but hit the button. And then I'm going to go around. I'm basically going to call on some of you to share out your answers. So as I give Sinovia the floor here, just make sure that you are paying attention and following along. Maybe you take some notes down or you think about the way in which you disagree. So what would be great is if I can have people hold up an agree or disagree while someone's talking on your screen. That way I can see whether you have a different view than Sinovia does or the next person that's speaking. So Sinovia, I'm going to unmute you and you can share out your answer to either question.
Okay, I'm answering number 4. And I think that the changes were necessary because they made work easier and more efficient for the workers there. And without them, they probably would have all died before they could have worked anymore or like made the products that they did. Therefore, improving like inventions or technology that's made in the future. So like probably without the technology that was used in the olden days, we wouldn't have some of the technology that makes work easier for us now.
Yeah, that was an awesome answer. I'm gonna go now to Eric. Eric, so start off by saying, once you unmute yourself, whether you agree or disagree with Synovia, and then you can add on to your point.
Okay, so I agree with Synovia because I said that in the Industrial Revolution, many children worked for many hours and they worked for little pay, and also that they were working in poor working conditions, and like Synovia said, that many could have died, and also many could have gotten injured by the machinery.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very true. We'll have one more person for this one, and then we're going to tackle number 5. So thank you, Eric, for sharing. And now I'm going to call on, let's see, let's have Bintu finish off that one. So Bintu, for number 4, can you share your answer?
For number 4, my answer was that the changes were not necessary during the Industrial Revolution, because even though we had all of the stuff we have now because of the changes made, it would have been much better for the people back then if the changes did not occur, because the changes included the workers to work in factories and they were in horrible conditions.
Wow, that's a good insight. I like how you were able to look at similar facts to Synovia and Eric, but you came away with a different result. I liked how you look at the wording there too. There's no right or wrong answer here. And that's one thing that we need to practice in history is, unlike in Latin or math, sometimes in TA, there's no right or wrong answer here. So the important thing is that you come up with a point that you can defend and that you are passionate about. Quincy, your hand is up, so I'm going to call on you to kick off number 5 here.
Basically, I was gonna do number 4.
Just try number 5.
Never mind.
Okay. Naya, why don't you start us off for number 5 here?
I want to say that I agree. I disagree. Actually, you know what? I agree with Marxism because I think it's just an easier way to make society more equal, because you see the homeless people on the street. Like if we decided to do like Marxism, like if we decided to be like a Marxist country or something like that, then I think that we would. Then I think that there wouldn't be as much homeless people on the streets, and they wouldn't be more exposed to the coronavirus and all that stuff.
That's an interesting point. I like that a lot because you're trying to compare it to modern society and you see those issues still here. So let's have one more person finish up. So raise your hand if you'd like to cap off our discussion here about Marxism. And if no one raises their hand, I'm just gonna cold call someone. Joseph, I'm gonna unmute you.
Okay, so I respectfully disagree with Naya because it wouldn't make sense for you to buy something and then everybody shares it, because it's your stuff. So you could choose what you want to do with your property. And what if you own a house and because of this other people are gonna go inside it and probably spread disease or maybe destroy your house or something? Then it wouldn't seem fair.
Wow, that was an awesome point too, Joseph. And we're going to end here because that's unfortunately all the time we have. But that was an awesome discussion. You will have these discussions throughout middle school and high school because this is a topic that you're going to keep learning about. And I'm glad that a lot of you are interested in it. When I was in middle school, I loved this topic. And I hope that you remember that communism, socialism, and capitalism are 3 extremely popular forms of government, and that which one you support is going to depend on how you think society should be changed and what you think the government should do about it. So definitely be thinking about this with coronavirus and the things that are happening now with healthcare, and try to pay attention to the news, because you might be able to have an educated opinion about it now that you have learned about these systems of government. I am going to put some guides up online, and I will send out a link sometime this week with some information if you want to keep studying this and you want to maybe participate in this discussion even more. That's all the time we have now, though. And thank you, Anaya, for putting some Latin in the chat, for saying thank you. I don't have time for questions. And so I will just say walete and just get ready for number stories, and I'll wait for Miss Scylla to come in here.